Hello, everybody, and welcome to my channel. I am the Backwoods Atheist, and well, today we're going to figure out where I stand politically. Because I've had a couple people ask recently, and I don't really have a very good answer, to be completely honest. I've only gotten into this stuff in the last couple years, so we're going to take this political compass test, and we're going to see where exactly we fall, shall we? So, question number one. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I agree. Strongly agree. Number two, I always support my country whether or not it was right or wrong. Strongly disagree. If your country does something wrong, you should call it out for it and try to do better. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Strongly agree. I'm very anti-nationalist. I don't see the point of fucking the whole flag wave, rah, rah, rah bullshit. I don't get it. I really just don't. Our race has many superior qualities compared to other races. Strongly disagree. And I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but you ever notice that the people who think they're part of the superior race are always the worst examples of that race? Like with white supremacists, it's always these toothless fucking motherfuckers that are chewing chaw and fucking living out of their mama's fucking basements, ain't never had a fucking job in their lives, and they're bitching about how the minorities are keeping them down. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I disagree with that. Because let's say ISIS. ISIS would probably be considered an enemy by many Christians. Of course, I would consider many Christians also my enemy. So I don't really see, to me they're two sides of the same coin. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Disagree. We have these international laws for a reason. They're meant to keep peace. You shouldn't be defying international law. You should find other ways to deal with stuff like that. Alright, last one on this page. There is a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I agree with this, but I'm not going to strongly agree. I think there is a lot of news programs that have gone to the point where they're now, instead of they're trying to present information, they're just pandering to a base. They're just pandering to the people that already watch their programming. Alright, let's go to the next one. Oh God, economics. I'm warning y'all right now, I don't know jack shit about economics, so this is probably going to be all over the place. Question one. People are ultimately more divided by class than by nationality. I agree. It's unfortunate that a lot of people don't see that and would rather fight on nationalistic lines than actually working to improve the situation for their particular class. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. No idea. But I'm going to disagree with this. I think controlling unemployment would be a little bit more important. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Strongly agree. A corporation exists for one purpose. And that purpose is to create profit. And if it is allowed to do so, it'll create profit to the detriment of everything else around it. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. I think it is fundamentally. I think there's a little tweaks that need to be done there, but fundamentally I think it's a good idea. The freer the market, the freer the people. Disagree. Completely disagree with that. If you go back to the early days of laissez-faire capitalism, you had people putting children in coal mines and shit like that. So no, I don't think that's necessarily true. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is bottled and branded a consumer product. Strongly agree. I'm one of those people. This is why a lot of people call me a socialist, because I believe certain things shouldn't be for profit. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. I disagree with that. I don't have any problem with people owning private land. I think there should be a little bit of restriction on how much land private corporations can own. But as for individual citizens, I think they should be able to own property. I have no problem with that. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who manipulate money and contribute nothing to society. I strongly agree with that. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I'd say it's sometimes necessary. I wouldn't say it's always necessary or even always good. In fact, I think it sometimes can be bad. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Disagree. If you're part of a society, you have responsibilities to that society other than just providing profit. But that's what corporations do. They are made to do nothing but provide profit. The rich are too highly taxed. Disagree. Strongly disagree. It's pretty sad when I pay a higher percentage of my wages every year than fucking Bezos does. That's pretty fucked, in my opinion. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Strongly disagree. That's another part. Like I said, I don't think certain things should be profit. One of those things I don't think should be profit is medical care. I don't think when it comes to determining whether or not keeping somebody alive, money should never come into that conversation. Never. To me, that's just a moral thing. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Yes, to an extent. To an extent. Probably have to do a video where I explain that a little better, but yes, to an extent though. Genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predatory multinationals to create monopolies. Agree. With monopolies, then no free. Alright. Page number 3. Here we go. Let's look at some of our personal social values. When a woman's life is not threatened, should always abortion. When a woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Disagree. People should have a right to their reproduction. Should have a right to decide when they can and cannot have children. And as I've said in other videos, if you really want to stop abortion, you would be all for providing things like free contraception and better sexual education for children. All authority should be questioned. Agree. To an extent. To an extent, I agree. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Strongly disagree. I'm one of those people, I'm all about justice. I'm not about vengeance. There's a big difference between justice and vengeance. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Disagree. I disagree with that. I think there are certain things that should be kept around, history museums and things like that I think are good for us culturally and good for our society, even if they're not good at making money. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I can agree with this, but only to an extent. Only to an extent. I'll have to do a video where I would explain that if people are really curious, but to an extent. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people keep to their own kind. Strongly disagree. If you can't pick up on what they're talking about right there, they're talking about ethno-states, which is something I am morally opposed to in every possible way. You know, your ethnic background should never be required on whether or not you are able to live in a certain place. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. As a father, I disagree. I feel there are much better ways to discipline your children. I personally have never had to spank my children, and my children are very well behaved. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Agree. I agree with that, you know. And if you're a really good parent, as those kids get older, they will tell you these secrets. But teenagers and young kids are always going to keep things from their parents. Your best bet is just to try to make sure that your kids know that they can come to you with any problem they have, and that you're going to do what you can to make it better and try to fix it and try to help them through it, or try to help them to fix it. A parent's job is to guide their children. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. Anybody that's ever watched my channel would know that I strongly agree with that one. Strongly agree. The primary function of schooling should be to equip future generations to find jobs. I disagree with that. I think it's a half and half thing. I think half of it should be to help them find jobs, but I think a lot of it should also be to help them so that they can function in the society that they're going to live in. It's not all about getting jobs. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Strongly disagree. We're not going for no Nazi eugenics bullshit. The most important thing for a child to learn is to accept disability or discipline. I disagree with that. I think it's much more important for children to learn things like critical thinking and problem solving and a sense of empathy towards their fellow man. There are no savage or civilized peoples, only different cultures. Strongly agree with that. I think every culture, if you look at it close enough, is savage in its own way and civilized in its own way. You know, that's just one of the things. We're all humans, and all of our cultures have, in one way or another, been pretty fucked up at one point or another. To those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Agree to an extent. To an extent. When you are troubled, it is better to not think about it, but to keep busy and keep busy with more cheerful things. I can agree with that, but it depends on what you're troubled on. I mean, sometimes it's not a good idea to just leave alone a problem. Sometimes, even if it's something that's troubling you, it's something that you need to solve and to fix. All right. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated into their new country. I strongly disagree with this. I think it's perfectly possible for somebody to come here as a first generation immigrant and completely take on the society and the cultural aspects of America. I don't see that being a problem at all. In fact, I've known people who have been first generation immigrants who they embrace American society much more even than I do. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Strongly disagree. Like I said earlier, corporations exist for one purpose only, and that is to make profit. And if allowed to do so, they will do to the detriment of everything else around them. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should be receiving public funding. I disagree. I think things like public broadcasting, what we have here in the States, we call it PBS. I think it's very good, especially when it comes for children. There's a lot of educational programming on there. And, it gets your kids away from just the stupid bullshit they got on Cartoon Network and shit like that nowadays. And it's something that can actually teach them things, especially for younger children. I know I loved PBS Kids when had my kids were younger. They loved it. And even to this day, my kids still love it. So now we're going to go on to the next page.